Okay, and welcome back, students taking Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications, and we're working on the Chapter 16 Summary Practice Test, problem number 1, and it's part D, okay? And for D and the net income, all right, in the previous video, you saw me explain that we have our, let me just erase some of this here. We have our sales less cost of goods sold gives us our gross profit. And from our gross profit, we have to subtract out our expenses in order to end up with our profit or loss, which is our net income or our net loss. Okay, so, as this practice test problem was set up, you went from, you calculated your net sales, okay, and then you went and you had to figure out your cost of goods sold. And we use that information from the cost of goods sold in order to figure out our gross profit from the sales. Now we're going to take that gross profit from the sales, because remember, we have the gross profit here of 140,000, and now in order to get our net income, we have to take out our expenses, which is this 56,000. Okay. And we end up with 84,000 as our net income, and that's the answer to D, 84,000. And so when we look at this in total, less our cost of goods sold of 21,000, okay, this is how we, doing the math seemed relatively easy in order to be able to calculate this 84,000, because we went step by step by step from one problem to the next, and we just picked up and added to it. But the point I want to keep on trying to make here is that if we started out with our original problem, and let's say we were not told to calculate these three, and we were only told to calculate this net income, okay? Well, in the direct, it has nothing to do with the problem, and we have to manipulate some of this here data, okay? We have to understand how our net income is calculated, sales less cost of goods sold gives me a gross profit, and then I take out that expenses in order to arrive at my profit or loss, or my net income or net loss. And as we work through this problem, I would have to first figure out what my net sales were, all right? And we ended up with 161,000, and that was an A. And then from there, I'd have to figure out what my cost of goods sold was. Okay, so I can plug that in from the data that we're being given. We have to manipulate that data. Okay, we have to do something with it in order to arrive at the direct piece of information that we need in order to be able to figure out what we're looking for. And of course, that gave us our gross profit of 140,000, and yet we're told our direct expenses were 56,000, which made that relatively easy, so that our bottom line is $84,000. Okay. Now, the whole point I'm trying to get at here is that if you understand the entire structure of something, okay, then you can figure out the parts. The sum of the parts, sum of the parts is equal to the whole. Okay. If you understand the whole, then you can figure out all of the parts. If you only understand some of the parts, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to figure out the whole. So, this may be, like I said, kind of dense and what seems to be a little bit convoluted, but you have to understand the entire concept so that when you're given a piece here or a piece there, you're able to fill in the blanks and figure it out. I get a lot of people who they're reading the textbook and they're saying, I understand what's in the chapter, but I can't do the homework problems. Okay, and the reason why they can't do the homework problems is because they end up trying to mimic or copy exactly what's in the textbook. And yeah, the whole concept is explained in the textbook, but when it comes to doing actual problems, different situations call for different scenarios, okay, and different ways of working it within the context of that same problem, within that situation. Like in this case here, if I understand what makes up net income, then I can figure out everything else. Okay, if I understand net income. If I don't, I'm dead in the water. And yeah, the textbook will present this information here and give you one example, but it's not going to show it in a neat and orderly fashion. If you were just asked to figure out cost of goods sold like you did in B, you're not going to see oftentimes an example that matches what's in the textbook, right? Because as you saw in figuring out cost of goods sold, I was able to expand it. It had net purchases in there. Well, what's net purchases? Well, that's the same type of thinking about net sales, where I have returns and allowances and discounts to consider. But depending upon the information that I'm given, I may or may not have it there. And the book can't give you every possible scenario that's been ever created, in business since the beginning of time and going through to the future. No, it's presenting the concept, and it's up to you to understand the concept and be able to manipulate it and use it in order to be able to arrive at what you need to figure out for that particular situation, that scenario, or that problem. Okay. All right. So that's the end of practice test question number 1, and we'll move on to the other ones in the next in the next videos.